The human ship dropped from hyperspace like a silver arrow, cutting through the crimson sky of the alien planet. The surface below was jagged, covered with deep chasms and towering rock formations that seemed to scrape the clouds. Ethan, the human soldier, pressed his forehead against the cockpit glass, trying to take in the sight. He had traveled across galaxies, seen worlds both beautiful and deadly, but nothing prepared him for this. When the ship finally touched the rocky ground, a cold wind swept across the plains, carrying a sharp metallic scent. Before Ethan could even open the door, he sensed them, figures moving with unnatural grace. Alien warriors, tall, muscular, and terrifyingly beautiful. Their silver-tinged skin reflected the dim sunlight, and their eyes glimmered like sharp, polished gemstones. Blades curved like crescent moons hung across their chests, and the air around them seemed to hum with silent power. The moment Ethan stepped onto the planet's surface, the warriors surrounded him. Their movements were swift, fluid, almost like hunting predators circling prey. He raised his hand slowly, signaling peace. "I come in peace," he said, using the universal translator, hoping the words sounded honest and strong. His heart pounded against his chest, each beat loud enough, he feared, to betray his fear. The leader stepped forward. She was taller than the others, her skin shimmering with hints of gold in the sunlight. A jagged scar ran down her left cheek, giving her an air of both danger and authority. She studied Ethan with eyes so sharp he felt they could see into his very soul. "Humans speak of peace," she said, her voice low and powerful. "But bring fire." Ethan swallowed. The stories of this planet's warriors had terrified humans for centuries. They were known to be merciless, to strike down intruders without hesitation. Yet he noticed something different, something beyond their deadly skill. There was intelligence in their movements, a quiet pride, and, strangely, a kind of elegance that even he, a hardened soldier, could not ignore. He took a cautious step forward, trying to show he meant no harm. "I am here to learn, to understand," he said. "I do not wish to fight." His words felt small in the face of so much power, but he spoke them with every ounce of courage he had left. The warriors did not immediately respond. Their silence was like a wall, unyielding and intimidating. Ethan could feel the weight of their gazes pressing against him, judging him. But then a flicker of curiosity crossed the leader's face. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was there. She tilted her head slightly as if considering his words. Hours passed with no one speaking, yet Ethan could not leave. He was both a guest and a prisoner, caught in the gaze of beings who were unlike anything he had ever known. Every step he took, every movement was observed. Yet, with each passing moment, he began to understand them better. The way they moved, the subtle tension in their muscles, the silent communication in their eyes. At night, when the twin moons rose over the jagged cliffs, Ethan stood alone and looked at the warriors from afar. They trained in perfect synchronization, their bodies moving with a rhythm that was almost hypnotic. He felt something stir inside him, fear mixed with awe, admiration, and an inexplicable respect. They were fierce, yes, but there was something more, something he could not yet name, and then, without warning, he felt it. A strange pull in his chest, an urge to speak a truth he had never said aloud. He swallowed hard and whispered into the quiet night, though the words were meant not for anyone else but for the beings watching him. "You are so beautiful." The words hung in the air, trembling like fragile glass. Somewhere in the shadows he thought he saw the leader pause mid-motion. Time seemed to stop, the wind silenced, and for the first time, the alien warriors looked at him, not as an enemy, not as an intruder, but as someone who dared to see them differently. Ethan did not know then what would happen next, but he understood one truth clearly. He had stepped into a world where beauty and danger walked hand in hand, and one honest word could change everything. The days that followed were strange for Ethan. The alien warriors never spoke to him directly, yet they no longer attacked. He moved through their fortress under watchful eyes, each step measured, each gesture noted. Their stone halls were massive and cold, echoing with the sound of footsteps and the clash of training weapons. Ethan often paused to watch them. Every movement was precise, every motion elegant, like a dance he had no hope of learning. Even in their silence, he could feel their strength. The warriors were not just strong, they were art in motion. Their muscles shifted under skin that shimmered with an almost metallic glow, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. And yet, despite their deadly skill, there was grace, a quiet beauty that no weapon could match. Ethan found himself captivated. One evening he wandered into the training yard. The sky was painted in shades of violet and crimson as the twin moons rose above jagged peaks. The warriors were practicing in small groups, their blades slicing through the air with deadly precision. Ethan's heart pounded, not out of fear this time, but out of awe. He had never seen such power, such perfection. He stepped closer, quietly, careful not to disturb them. His eyes followed a young warrior as she leaped, her blade tracing arcs of light. She was fast, but Ethan noticed the concentration in her face, the way her movements carried a rhythm almost like a song. Without thinking, he whispered to himself, "You are so beautiful." The words floated into the night. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The warrior froze mid-step. Her eyes widened, and for the first time her movements slowed. Ethan's chest tightened. He had spoken without caution, without understanding the weight of his words, but he could not take them back. From the shadows, others paused as well. The leader, Varya, turned sharply, her eyes narrowing. Ethan's heart raced. He had expected anger, perhaps even violence. But instead he saw something else. A flicker of curiosity, of hesitation, almost like confusion. He swallowed hard and stepped back, raising his hands slightly. I only meant to say the truth," he said. His voice was steady, but his pulse thrummed like a drum in his ears. "I see your strength. I see your courage, and I see your beauty." The warriors exchanged glances. The young one who had frozen lowered her blade slowly, her breathing uneven. Varya's scarred face softened ever so slightly, though her eyes remained sharp, calculating. For a human, it was impossible to know exactly what they were thinking, but Ethan felt a shift, subtle yet undeniable. That night he was led to a small chamber in the fortress. He was not locked away, but he was watched. The walls were bare, cold stone, and the air smelled faintly metallic. Ethan sat on the floor, feeling the exhaustion of constant vigilance settle into his bones. Yet despite the fear, he felt hope. Something had changed. His words, simple as they were, had pierced the wall of suspicion that surrounded him. As he lay awake, he thought about the warriors. Each of them carried a story, he realized. A story of survival, of battles fought and won, of losses endured. They were not just fighters. They were individuals, beings shaped by harsh worlds and harder choices. And somehow, in the simplest human way, he had reached them. Ethan closed his eyes, thinking of the young warrior who had frozen. Her hesitation, her subtle grace, the way she had held herself, he could not forget it. He realized then that beauty was not just a human idea or a fleeting thought. It was courage. It was strength. It was the willingness to move forward even when the world expected you to stop. And in that quiet, stone chamber, surrounded by beings who could destroy him without a second thought, Ethan understood one thing clearly. Seeing the truth, speaking honestly, could be more powerful than any weapon. Outside, the fortress was silent under the light of the twin moons. Inside, a fragile thread of trust had begun to form, invisible yet strong. And for the first time, Ethan believed that maybe, just maybe, he could survive here. The days after the first encounter were quieter than Ethan expected. The alien warriors trained tirelessly, their movements sharp and disciplined, but there was a subtle shift. They no longer ignored him entirely, yet they did not trust him either. He noticed the way they paused when he walked by, their eyes flickering with curiosity, suspicion, and something he could not yet name. Ethan tried to learn their ways. He observed their training patterns, the way they held their weapons, how their eyes communicated without words. Slowly he began to understand their rhythm, the language of strength and survival that was written in every step and every gesture, and in return he began to show them his own. He practiced patience, restraint, and respect. Simple human gestures, but they mattered here in this alien world. One morning, the leader, Varya, approached him. Her scarred face was calm, yet her eyes were piercing. "You watch us often," she said. Her voice was low, carrying authority, yet there was no accusation. Ethan nodded. "I am learning," he replied. "I want to understand you, your people, your ways." Varya studied him, silent for a long moment. Then she gestured toward the training yard. "Then come," she said. "Learn by doing, not just watching." Ethan followed her, heart pounding. The warriors lined up, blades in hand. Today they would teach him, not to fight them, but to survive among them. He was clumsy at first. His movements were awkward, and his human reflexes often failed him against their precision. He stumbled more than once, earning a few sharp looks and subtle corrections. Yet he kept trying because he knew this was more than training. It was a bridge. After hours of practice, sweat dripping from his brow, Ethan finally paused. He was exhausted, but he looked at the warriors and he felt a strange pride. He had survived their trial. And in that moment, Varya said something that made his chest tighten. "You endure," she said softly, almost a whisper. Few humans would survive even an hour. Ethan's throat tightened. He had not expected praise, not from them. I only try," he said quietly. "Because I respect you. Because I see you." The words caused a stir. The other warriors exchanged glances, some of them tilting their heads as if reconsidering their previous judgments. Ethan realized something profound. In a world where strength was everything, honesty and respect could be just as powerful. Over the next days, conversations began in small, careful ways. They asked him about Earth, about humans, about why he had come so far from his home. Ethan spoke of courage, of hope, of the belief that even the strongest beings could recognize beauty and strength in others. Varya listened most of all. Sometimes she asked questions. Sometimes she simply watched, and Ethan could feel her mind working, her thoughts measuring his intentions. Yet not all the warriors were convinced. Some whispered behind his back, warning one another of humans' deceit and weakness. Ethan felt their suspicion, but he did not falter. He walked among them openly, helped with minor tasks in the fortress, and offered small gestures of kindness, such as sharing water or helping to tend the wounded after training. Slowly, the whispers lessened. Ethan realized that trust would not come all at once. It would be earned day by day, moment by moment, and each small victory, each silent acknowledgement from a warrior, felt like a triumph greater than any battlefield conquest he had ever known. At night, he often stood on the high cliffs overlooking the fortress, watching the twin moons rise. He thought of the warriors, of Varya, of the strength and beauty they carried within them. And he whispered again, softly, almost to himself, "You are so beautiful, all of you." Somewhere in the fortress, he sensed that the words had reached them, not as a threat, not as a lie, but as truth. And for the first time, Ethan felt that fragile thread of trust growing, delicate, unseen, yet unbreakable. In a world built on strength and survival, he had found a way to connect, to reach them in a language no weapon could speak. And in that connection, he discovered hope, not just for himself, but for the human spirit to touch even the hardest of hearts. The morning started quietly, but the calm was a lie. Alarms blared through the fortress, metal doors clanging as warriors rushed to their stations. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest like a war drum. From the observation deck he saw them, enemy ships descending from the sky, black silhouettes against the crimson horizon. The alien warriors moved with deadly precision, their blades glinting, their bodies coiled like springs ready to strike. Varya appeared beside him, her eyes sharp and calculating. "Stay here," she ordered, her voice commanding but not cruel. "This is not your fight." But Ethan shook his head. "I am not staying behind," he said firmly. "I will help. I can fight." Varya studied him, her gaze piercing. For a moment he feared she would refuse. Then she nodded almost reluctantly. "Follow me," she said, "and do not get in the way." Ethan drew a deep breath and followed her into the chaos. The fortress erupted into battle. Enemy forces poured through the gates, sleek and mechanical, their weapons firing streaks of blue energy. The alien warriors met them with unparalleled skill, moving as a single deadly organism. Ethan ran alongside them, his rifle in hand, trying to keep pace. His human body could not match their speed, but his determination pushed him forward. The clash was brutal. Blades met energy weapons in sparks and flashes. The sound of metal against metal, the cries of the wounded, and the roar of engines filled the air. Ethan ducked under a swinging blade, rolled across the stone floor, and fired at the approaching machines. He was outmatched, outgunned, but he did not falter. Every move he made was fueled by courage, by the desire to protect these warriors who had begun to trust him. Suddenly, a young warrior was cornered by an enemy mech. She swung her blade, but the machine's armor was too strong. Without thinking, Ethan leapt in front of her, taking the strike himself. Pain exploded through his side, hot and sharp, but he gritted his teeth and held his ground long enough for her to strike back. The machine fell, sparks flying, and the warrior looked at him with wide, astonished eyes. Varya rushed to his side, concern flashing across her scarred face. "Are you hurt badly?" she demanded, her voice a mix of anger and fear. Ethan shook his head, forcing a grin. "I'm fine," he said through gritted teeth. "You're safe." For the first time, the warriors saw something extraordinary, not human strength, not speed, but something deeper. Ethan's courage did not come from his body, but from his heart. He faced danger willingly, not because he had to, but because he chose to protect those who had begun to trust him. The battle raged on, but the tide slowly turned. The warriors, inspired by Ethan's bravery, fought with renewed vigor. Their movements were sharper, faster, more deadly than ever. Together, human and alien pushed back the invaders, reclaiming the fortress step by step. When the last enemy ship fell, silence returned, broken only by heavy breathing and the distant hum of the planet's wind. The fortress was scarred, some warriors wounded, but they had survived. Ethan stood among them, pain stabbing through his body, yet he felt a strange exhilaration. Varya approached him, her expression unreadable. Then softly, almost a whisper, she said, "You have courage beyond your kind." Ethan looked at her, his chest heaving. "I only see what is worth protecting," he said quietly. His eyes scanned the warriors around him, those who had once feared him, and now looked at him with something like respect. In that moment, Ethan understood the truth of this world. Bravery was not measured in strength alone. It was measured in choices, in standing for what was right even when the odds were impossible. And in that understanding, he knew he had crossed a threshold. He was no longer just a visitor. He was part of their story now. The battle had ended. But the fortress was quiet in a way that felt strange to Ethan. The echoes of metal and cries had faded, replaced by the soft rustle of the twin moon's light across the stone floors. The alien warriors moved slowly now, tending to their wounded, cleaning their weapons, and repairing the damage that had been done. Ethan's body ached from his injuries, but the pain felt lighter than it should have. He was alive, and more importantly, the warriors were alive. Varya approached him, her scarred face softened by exhaustion but still carrying that same sharp intensity. In her hands were simple tools for tending wounds, something he had not expected from the leader of such fierce warriors. "Sit," she commanded gently. "You need care." Ethan sank onto the stone floor, wincing as she examined the gash along his side where he had shielded the young warrior. Her hands were surprisingly gentle, the movement precise, almost reverent. He could feel her strength radiating, and yet in this small, quiet act there was tenderness, a side of her no battle had ever revealed. "You risked your life for her," she said softly. Her eyes locked on his. "Why?" Ethan looked into her piercing gaze and found courage and honesty. "Because I see you," he said quietly. "All of you. Not just as warriors, not just as fighters. I see your courage, your strength, your beauty." Varya's hand paused over the wound, and for a moment Ethan feared he had overstepped. But then he noticed a subtle shift in her expression. Her lips twitched, almost forming a smile, though she quickly hid it. The young warrior he had protected peeked from behind a pillar, her eyes wide, not with fear but with awe. Ethan realized that his words had touched something deep in them, something no weapon, no strategy could ever reach. The hours passed slowly. Ethan lay back, letting Varya tend to his wounds. The other warriors came and went, some staring quietly, some offering small gestures of kindness, a water skin, a blanket, a nod of acknowledgement. It was unlike anything he had experienced before. These were creatures of immense power and discipline, yet here they were, showing trust, showing care, in their own reserved ways. Ethan felt emotions he had long buried, relief, pride, and a warmth that spread through him like sunlight breaking through clouds. He realized that bravery was not just about facing an enemy. It was about opening yourself to others, about trusting and being trusted in return. He had faced death in the battle, but this quiet moment, this fragile connection, was its own kind of danger and its own kind of triumph. Varya finally spoke again, her voice soft, almost a whisper. "Your kind surprises us," she said. "We thought humans were fragile, weak, but you carry something different, something rare." Ethan gave a small, tired smile. "It's what every human carries," he said. "The choice to protect, to care, even when it's not easy, even when it's scary." The young warrior stepped closer, her weapon set aside. She looked at him with an intensity that frightened and moved him at once. "You see us?" "Truly see us," she said simply. There was no accusation, no fear, just truth. Ethan nodded. "I do. And I always will." In that quiet chamber, surrounded by beings who had once considered him an enemy, he felt something extraordinary: belonging. Trust had begun to grow between them, delicate yet unbreakable. It was a bridge built not of weapons or strategies, but of courage, respect, and honesty. As the twin moons cast their silver light over the fortress, Ethan realized that he had not only survived the battle, but he had survived the walls around their hearts. And in that survival, he had created something stronger than any weapon. A connection that could withstand fear, mistrust, and even war. And for the first time, in the silence after chaos, he allowed himself to hope. The days after the battle were unlike any Ethan had known. The fortress was alive again, not with alarms and chaos, but with quiet determination. The alien warriors moved with purpose, repairing their weapons, mending walls, and tending to one another's wounds. And through it all, Ethan was no longer an outsider. He was present, accepted, and increasingly respected. Varya walked beside him often, silently observing his every move. She no longer issued orders harshly, but her presence alone reminded him of her authority. Ethan noticed subtle changes in the other warriors too. Those who had whispered warnings behind his back now approached him openly. Some shared brief smiles, others nodded in acknowledgement, and a few even offered small gestures. A cup of water, a simple question, or a shared laugh at a minor mistake. It was fragile trust, but it was growing. Training sessions became different. Instead of only watching, Ethan joined them actively, learning their techniques, adapting as best he could. His movements were still slower, less fluid, but he tried with all his heart. And the warriors began to adjust for him, allowing him space, correcting gently, offering guidance. For the first time, Ethan felt like he was not just surviving among them, but contributing. One evening, after the sun dipped below the jagged horizon, Varya led him to the highest terrace of the fortress. The twin moons cast silver light over the jagged cliffs, illuminating the warriors below as they trained. Ethan gazed at them, awe-filled, and then turned to her. "They're incredible," he said softly. Varya's eyes softened, a rare moment of vulnerability crossing her scarred face. "And so are you," she said quietly, almost as if testing the words. Ethan blinked, surprised. "I don't understand," he admitted. "You risked yourself," she explained, her voice calm but firm. "Not out of orders or duty, but out of choice. You see us, all of us, not as enemies, not as objects, but as living beings. And that is rare. That is strength." Ethan felt a warmth rise in his chest, a mix of pride and humility. He realized then that true respect and admiration could bridge worlds, that courage and honesty could tear down walls that weapons never could. The other warriors began to notice as well. They watched him during training, during daily tasks, and slowly, their suspicion gave way to curiosity, then recognition. One by one, they began to approach him, asking questions about Earth, about humans, about life beyond their planet. Ethan answered patiently, sharing stories of courage, hope, and humanity's stubborn will to survive. He spoke of kindness and empathy, of beauty and strength, and the warriors listened, intrigued by a perspective they had never known. The fortress was changing, not only physically but emotionally. Walls of distrust crumbled, replaced by tentative trust, shared moments, and silent acknowledgments. Warriors who had once frozen at his presence now fought alongside him, laughed with him, and even offered advice. Ethan was no longer a visitor. He had become a part of their lives. Varya approached him one night as he sat quietly, watching the moons reflect on the cliffs. "Your kind carries a strange power," she said softly. "Not of muscle, not of weapons, but of heart. That power has changed us." Ethan smiled, exhausted but content. "It's what every human carries," he said. "The choice to protect, to trust, to see truth and beauty where others might see only danger." Varya nodded, a rare, genuine smile brushing her lips. The other warriors watched from a distance, silent but attentive. The fortress had survived the battle, yes, but more importantly, its people had survived something far deeper, the walls around their hearts. And in that survival, Ethan realized something profound. Humans were fragile, yes, but their fragility was tempered by courage. Their honesty and respect could inspire even the most hardened warriors. And in that truth, he felt a sense of accomplishment deeper than any victory in battle. He had not only survived, he had transformed the way these alien warriors saw the universe. The twin moons rose high above the cliffs, casting their silver light across the fortress. In that light, Ethan saw something extraordinary, a future where trust, courage, and admiration could connect worlds, and where a human could not only survive among giants but stand as an equal. The fortress was quiet in the early morning, the air still with the calm after days of rebuilding and reflection. Ethan stood on the highest terrace, looking out over the jagged cliffs bathed in the silver light of the twin moons. The alien warriors moved below, training and repairing. But there was a change in them now, a difference that was invisible to any enemy but clear to those who had shared battle. Trust and courage. Varya approached silently, her steps light despite the weight of her presence. Her scarred face, once fierce and intimidating, now carried an expression of contemplation and respect. She stood beside him, gazing down at the warriors below, and for a moment neither spoke. Silence between them was comfortable, filled with understanding. Finally, she broke the quiet. "You have done something no human or alien has done in centuries," she said softly. "You have shown us strength not with weapons, but with your heart. You see beauty where others see danger, courage where others see fear, and in doing so, you have changed us." Ethan looked at her, tired but smiling. "I only spoke the truth," he said. "I saw all of you, not just warriors, not just fighters, but living beings. And I wanted you to know that you are beautiful." Varya's eyes widened slightly. The usual edge in her gaze softened into something more human, more vulnerable. Around them, the other warriors began to notice, their eyes flicking toward the two. The words Ethan had spoken in simple honesty had rippled through the fortress, touching hearts and shifting minds. One of the younger warriors stepped forward, her silver-tinged skin glowing softly in the moonlight. She bowed her head slightly, a gesture of respect, and said, "We never thought a human could see us this way. Not just our strength, but our true selves. You honor us." Ethan shook his head gently. "You honor yourselves," he said. "I just helped you see it. You fought, survived, healed each other, and still stand strong. That is the beauty I see." The warriors gathered around slowly, no longer wary, no longer suspicious. Their weapons were lowered, their stances relaxed. And in their eyes, Ethan saw a mixture of awe, admiration, and something he had never expected. Trust. Varya reached out, a rare gesture, and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are no longer just a human among us," she said. "You are one of us in spirit, if not in form. You have taught us that courage is not measured by the strength of your muscles, but by the choices you make, the risks you take, and the honesty you carry in your heart." Ethan's chest tightened. He had crossed galaxies, faced death, and endured battles that would have broken anyone else. Yet in that moment, standing among the alien warriors he had once feared, he felt a warmth and fulfillment far greater than any victory in war. He had not only survived, he had inspired. The fortress, once a place of cold discipline and unspoken rules, now pulsed with life and hope. Warriors laughed quietly as they trained, shared stories, and offered guidance to one another. And Ethan, the human who had dared to speak honestly, stood among them as a bridge, a reminder that even a single voice spoken with courage and truth could change the course of hearts and history. Varya looked at him one last time as the moons rose high. "Your kind is fragile," she said softly, "but your heart is stronger than many armies I have seen." Ethan smiled, feeling the weight of her words sink in. "And your kind is beautiful," he replied, "not just in strength but in spirit." The warriors around them paused, hearing the truth in his voice. And for the first time in centuries, the alien warriors realized that humans, small and seemingly fragile, carried a power that no weapon could match, the power to inspire, to trust, and to see beauty in the strongest of beings. Ethan looked out over the cliffs, the twin moons reflecting in his eyes. He had not only survived this world of giants, he had changed it. And in that change, he had proven one undeniable truth. Humanity, though fragile, could shine brighter than any star. The fortress stood as a testament, not to war, but to courage, honesty, and hope. And in the hearts of the alien warriors, a new respect was born. One that would endure, one that would inspire, and one that would never forget the human who saw their beauty and dared to speak it.